Mr. Marchant is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to discuss the part of the argument that we have not discussed yet this morning, and that was the interpretation of the Supreme Court of the state's responsibility in the mandate as it related to the expansion of the Medicaid and the Medicare, because when we all go back home now, our state legislators and our governors are most interested in the mandates that were placed on those governments, because in fact, although part of the bill, part of the law was declared a tax, the expansion of Medicaid to the states is always going to have been a tax, because the states were going to have to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars in their matching amounts to match the expansion, and the only way those states could pay for that would be to absorb that cost and pass that down to their taxpayers. So in many ways, Obamacare has always been a tax on many states. The court chose to address the personal mandate and said it's not a personal mandate, it's in fact a tax. But then they went on to discuss the responsibility or the mandate on the states. So I'd like to have your view of the ramifications of that constitutional change, or that interpretation, Mr. Bradbury.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very significant ruling. 7 members of the court recognized that there really is teeth to the idea that under the spending power, Congress cannot go so far as to coerce states into agreeing to regulations that Congress is imposing through its cooperative spending programs. And here what the court held is can't force states to accept the expansion of Medicaid at the peril of losing all of the other pre-existing Medicaid funding that the states enjoyed. That could be very significant. The states now understand, each governor now understands that the opting into the Medicaid expansion is truly an option that states have. And I think we saw yesterday that another governor of a major state has announced that that state, Texas, is not going to opt into the Medicaid expansion. So that's a very significant ruling, raises a lot of interesting questions about well, where are the lines that you draw as to what's coercive for states? And states may have arguments that other aspects of the Medicaid program or other cooperative federal state programs have crossed that line or might cross the line in the future. So I think it is going to be a rich vein, if you will, of new litigation and constitutional development in the court. The mandate has a lot of implications for state costs, too, because I think as the states that were in the Supreme Court made clear, the mandate, if it were a legal mandate that applied to everybody, not just the people who can afford to buy insurance and will have to pay the tax, but lower income people as well, it was going to cause a lot more people who are eligible for Medicaid to opt in, to actually choose to subject themselves to Medicaid or become a patient under Medicaid, and that was going to increase the cost to states very greatly. They recognize that. Unclear now whether that's going to happen or to what extent that will happen, because we now know it's not a mandate that applies to those people. It's just a tax that applies to people with a little bit higher income who can afford to buy.
So one of the major premises of the Affordable Health Care Act was that it would force millions more people into the system, which would create a larger pool, which would in effect create a smaller premium or a savings in premium. But in fact, as a result of both of these rulings, it's probably going to have a result of a significant millions less people participating. And so the premise that this Affordable Care Act would lower premiums is probably going to be erased. And the federal government, in fact, may be building on what Chairman Ryan said. What will probably happen is that since there is no savings, the system will create significant deficits to be implemented. And those deficits will have to be covered by cutting spending or raising taxes, And that responsibility will fall completely on the Congress. And Mr. Dellinger, do you agree that this will complicate the whole theory of more people participating?
Answer quickly because time has expired.
I do believe that it will complicate it, particularly if governors take what to me would be an extraordinary step of declining the expanded Medicaid funding, which will help the working poor afford insurance. If they're unable to, in states that actually turn down the expanded Medicaid support, I think it will have adverse effects on what the anticipations were.
All right. Thank you.